We got a really tight schedule this morning, so we hope that we can keep up with our schedule. First, I'd like to introduce Steve Sullivan. He's our featured speaker. Oh, are there any comments that anybody would like to make in the audience? Hearing none, then we will invite Steve to come up and do his thing.
He had a long drive from Talon, so he just stopped in the men's room. He'll be out in 30 seconds.
All right.
But I could set up the presentation if you'd like, just very quickly.
Sure.
Introduce
Go ahead.
myself. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeff Pugliese, Director of Community Relations for Eversource in the state of Connecticut here. I'm happy to be with you all. Very much appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you this morning. One of our strategic initiatives in 2023 is to get Steve Sullivan, who's our President of Electric Operations, out to key stakeholders, councils of government, chambers of commerce, other folks out in the field that may want to hear the message from Steve. He's serves as President of Electric Operations, has served in that role for about a year and a half, and wants to get out and share our message on a number of key fronts, including rates and system investments and improvements and storm prep and response and other areas. So without further ado, Steve, the floor is yours.
Apologize for being late.
No, you're not. You're happy, right?
Yeah, no, just again, thank you for having us here today. You know, I do think these council of governments, the economies of scale that you're trying to achieve in similar communities, I think it's a, it's a great idea and really, it does help our state. So I appreciate your time. I took a look at your agenda. I continue to be amazed at how much work you guys pack into one meeting. So I appreciate the time. I did think I would talk today briefly about the two things that are most tend to come up when we talk to customers and cities and towns: rates, and then as we're heading right into hurricane season, storm response. So again, if I start to run long, I saw your agenda, just give me the home signal and we'll wrap up. And I'm open to questions on basically.
I'll just throw the gavel.
Nice. I appreciate that. I would say it doesn't necessarily always feel like it, especially given the current political and media environment, if you will. But at Eversource, we really are proud members of the community, and we are supporters of the local economy. To that end, just a couple of thumbnail statistics: 1.3 million customers across the state. So the vast number of your constituents are our customers. 4,000 Connecticut-based employees. So some of your constituents are Eversource employees. We invested $1.4 billion last year just in Connecticut, just in the transmission and distribution delivery system. So 1.4 billion last year. That obviously has an overflow to the economy. And then, we believe that we pay at least our fair share, contribute, if you will, in taxes. So to the tune of $270 million last year, state and local taxes across Connecticut. So for most of your cities and towns, we're probably the #1 taxpayer. And if we're not, I'm quite sure we're in the top 5. So as I said, I think we certainly contribute our fair share. More locally, last year, about 35K in donations to local charities in the Northwest Hills area. And probably more importantly, our employees, we do come out to volunteer. So the Horse Rescue Farm in Washington, the YWCA camp in Jewel, the Ukraine Youth Camp in Colebrook, and others. Our folks do show up. We do volunteer at those events. And again, I just come back to, we believe we have a common goal, for Connecticut, a strong, vibrant, modern economy. And we truly do believe that a resilient electric transmission and distribution delivery system is really foundational to that. So with that, I'll go right into rates. So you're probably aware that our summer supply rates are going down essentially for the summer. So starting July 1st, through the end of the year, the supply side of the bill will go down to the tune of about 22% for the average customer. I will caution, though, that's 22% on the rates. Most customers tend to use more in the summer. I know I myself, June, July, and August is my highest bill, if you will. Luckily, my propane bill goes away, so those tend to offset, but and I'm saying that because many of our customers call you first before they call us. So even though the rates definitely are going down by about 22%, with usage going up, those two can often offset. So just be aware of that if you are getting customer calls. We went to great pains last winter, and I did in particular myself, to try and explain when those rates were going up, that we're not in the supply, that's the supply rate. We're not in the supply business as Eversource. We're in the delivery business. The delivery rates are relatively steady. And we went to great pains to try and point out the fact that it's going up is not Eversource. And I should say the same thing now. The fact that the rates are going down for the summer, it's not an Eversource. Should not be able to take credit for the fact that the rates are going down. That's really the supply side of your bill. And really the competitive marketplace that drives that. So to that end, I'll try and unpack the rates, if you will, because they're very complex and most folks don't spend a lot of time looking at their bill. They just look right to the average person, including myself, just goes right to the bottom line when you see your electric bill. But if you do look at your electric bill, first I'll start with, there's a list of almost a dozen, not quite a dozen, but a long list of line items on that bill, often filled with acronyms that are very hard to understand. I've been in this business well over 30 years. And if I don't have the decoder ring or the cheat sheet with me, I cannot understand most of what those line items mean. So first, I would say that was not an Eversource idea to make this bill as confusing as humanly possible so that no one knows what that bill means. We're a heavily regulated company. We literally get told what to put on the bill and how to put the bill together. By that, nor do I mean to imply that our regulator came up with the idea to say, let's make this as confusing as possible. It's just something that's evolved over decades. And I actually think, putting myself in the regulator's shoes, they have the decoder ring. So having it broken out like that actually gives them a lot of transparency into all the pieces that go into the bill. More generally, you will see that there's been an effort to try and break that out. If you do have the decoder ring, I'll put it this way. Those items really break out very clearly into three areas: a supply side, a delivery side, and a public policy side. And if you even take a pretty cursory glance at your bill, you will see it broken out into supply and delivery. In that delivery piece, when you look quickly at your bill, the public policy piece is included in what's called delivery on your bill. So I'll try to unpack those three pieces to the rates. Public policy is pretty much exactly what it says. Those are incentives, if you will, that are included in the bill. They come from a combination of PURA and the legislator. And they're things that I think most folks in Connecticut would support. And they break out into two flavors. One is really assistance. So if you qualify for certain income levels for assistance, you're basically getting assistance on your electric bill. But that is then spread out amongst all customers on their bill. The other flavor of the public policy piece are really more what I would call they're forward-thinking, long-term incentives to really try to move Connecticut faster towards clean energy. So items like solar, batteries will soon be on there, energy efficiency. There are incentives that are baked into the rates to try and get us faster towards a clean energy economy. So again, I think there are things that most folks in the state would probably support, but they're buried in your electric rates. And in this case on public policy, they're in the delivery side of your rates. And many other states don't do it that way. They choose to do, if they do it at all, they choose to do it a different way. The other piece that's in that delivery rate is the pure delivery side of the equation. And that is all Eversource. That's the transmission piece to get the power from the generator, if you will, to the substation. And then what's called distribution, which gets it from the substation to the customer. That's the only piece that's Eversource. That is where we generate our revenue, the revenue that allows us to invest that $1.4 billion in the state. It's the revenue that allows us to employ those 4,000 plus Connecticut-based employees. And it is the area and the only area where we're able to also give a return to our shareholders. A return that's in the same bandwidth as practically all other regulated utilities across the distribution utilities across the United States. So we're in that same bandwidth. And again, that's the only area is the true delivery portion of that bill. Then the third piece is the supply. So that's literally where the electricity is made, the generating plant. So the millstones of the world, if you will. But Millstone at this point in time is a bit of an anomaly. It's, if you look at the entire New England region, and it is a regional generation and transmission system, there's really only two nuclear power plants left, Millstone and Seabrook. You know, the Yankee power plants are retired, Pilgrim has retired. In addition to that, all of the coal-fired power plants have retired. Almost all of the oil-fired power plants are retired. There are still a couple left, but they're peakers. They just run for a few weeks a year, mostly in the winter. And they're trying to make all of their returns, if you will, in that peak period. So where do we get our electricity in New England? And it's natural gas. If you average it out over the course of the year, as a region in New England, we get just about 50% of our power supply is generated from natural gas. And, natural gas, with the discovery or access, I guess is a better way to put it, to shale gas. And these plants, they've all pretty much grown up in the last 20 or 30 years. They're very efficient. So they were very competitive in that the supply side, regulated competitive marketplace. Those gas plants were very competitive vis-a-vis the nuclear plants, the coal plants, the oil plants. The downside to those gas plants is they're relying on a gas pipeline system that was built decades ago, predates those gas-fired power plants, and really was built primarily to supply residential heating customers. There are some commercial manufacturing companies, but the majority of it is residential heat. So in the summer, those gas-fired power plants have plenty of gas. They run all summer long, as I said, very efficient, very competitive. In the winter, the gas goes first to those residential customers for their heating load. So if it's a cold winter, or if you have a cold snap, especially one that lasts several days or weeks, there literally is not enough natural gas left to go to those gas-fired power plants. So at that point, they have two choices. They can choose not to run, and they can do that because they're deregulated. They're not obligated to make electricity. They can choose not to make electricity. That would obviously be a bad day for us if you're relying on 50% of your power to come from that area. That is why folks have talked about the potential for rolling controlled outages in the winter. It goes back to the same issue. But primarily, that's not what they do. What these power plants do is they turn to liquefied natural gas, so LNG, and it actually gets pumped into the gas distribution transmission system is a better way to put it. There's two ports in New England. One is in Everett, very close to Boston, and one is actually up in Canada. Liquefied natural gas, as most of you probably know, it's a worldwide commodity. It goes on tanker ships. Those tanker ships can go whoever the highest bidder is. They go to Asia, they go to Europe, or they go to us in the Northeast. So historically, there has been a difference between summer supply prices and winter supply prices. But usually it was a very small difference. But as the coal-fired and oil-fired plants went away and we became more reliant on natural gas, that difference started to grow. It started to become noticeable, especially for folks that were really paying attention. But what happened this past winter, this is where Ukraine comes in. Sometimes people talk about that. Europe essentially decided they could not rely on Russia, their primary supplier of natural gas. So Europe went into the LNG market and they bought up a lot of the LNG. And that spiked that worldwide commodity. It just drove the LNG price right through the roof. And those gas-fired power plants, they could see that coming. They had to factor that into their pricing. So that's what drove last winter's supply price through the roof. Unfortunately, structurally, nothing has really changed. There's no new gas line into the New England region. Very unlikely that any are going to be built. Ukraine situation does not look like that's going away. So structurally, nothing's changed. It's highly likely that the same thing is going to happen this winter, and we're already seeing those price signals. So unfortunately, it's likely that, you know, in the fall, we're going to see that announcement that the next winter's January through June price supply side is going to go up. And I'm going to be trying to explain once again that it's not Eversource, but so that's really just an unpacking of the rates. If you look at that all together, again, I'll just try and point out, if you have to average it over the year, because it obviously portions of it are bouncing up and down. If you look at your bill, on average, about the average customer, about 50% of that is supply. About 40% of that is the true delivery piece, that's Eversource, and about 10% of that is public policy in round numbers. And again, as Eversource, we're only getting that 40%. It's an oddity that we send out the one bill. It's so customers don't get multiple bills. But for every $100 that a customer is sending us, we're basically taking 50 and we're passing that on through a third party, but we're passing that on to the generators. And about 10% of that, it's inaccurate to say it goes to, you know, a public policy entity, but it's basically just redistributing amongst customers. 40% of that truly comes to Eversource. That's where we get all of our shareholder return. That's where we get our ability to invest in the system. So just, you know, the last thing I'll say on that, and I'm happy to take questions. The last thing I'll say on that is just, again, when you get questions from your customers, NHCOG.com, folks can go out and choose their own supplier. We encourage that. We're not in the supply business. And there's a lot of different options out there. I would just caution folks to kind of read the fine print. But I do think some of that is levelized. Here has put some protections in place that I think protect customers better than they have been in the past. So we do encourage folks to go to NHCOG.com. And the other item would be energy efficiency. Through Eversource, you can get a home energy audit. It does take some time to schedule that, but you can get a home energy audit that can make your home more efficient. So those are really the two key things that, you know, I think you could offer folks that are calling you on behalf of calling Eversource. So I'll just pause there. Rates are very complicated. I tried to speed through that given the time, but I'm open to, you know, any questions at all that you might have on the rate side. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead. There was a lot of information this morning in this morning's paper regarding the generation of power by hydro plants. How many hydro plants are left in Connecticut?
That's a good question. You know, we're not in that business. Hydro in Connecticut is, there's a lot of smaller plants.
Right.
There are some that are still left. But the majority of hydro for us, it sounds like you probably know this, comes from Canada. There is quite a bit of capacity up in Canada. It has been in the news lately that the Canadians are saying our capacity is not limitless. Don't put all, you know, again, I think that's for us as a signal, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. But, you know, one of the ways to alleviate the over-reliance, if you will, on natural gas, we obviously have a lot of wind power being built, but it's not here yet. And it's going to start to come online over the next year or two, but you could certainly, whether you want to argue it's 3 to 5 years away or 5 to 15 years away, it's some time frame before enough of it will be online to really make a big difference. Hydro is an option. There is excess capacity there. You may know we tried to build a transmission line down through New Hampshire, but struggled and ultimately could not get it permitted. There is a company that's trying to build a line through Maine. They ran into a lot of permitting issues. That's all very public and is working its way through the courts, but it looks like they'll now be able to start up construction. And there is a second line that is permitted and they're just starting construction to bring it down through Vermont. It really would head towards New York, but that will have tangential help for New England as well. So hydro is out there. It's relatively inexpensive. It's certainly clean. And we do think that's a would be good for New England to get more access to hydropower, if that's kind of addressing the question.
Yeah, well, it is. I'm from Colebrook, so we've got the only two windmills in the state. We did have two hydro dams, but NBC took the turbines out of the Colebrook River Lake dam. And it was based on the fact that the cost to replace them and what they could charge per kilowatt just didn't make sense for them to. And they decided that they weren't in electrical generation business anymore.
Gotcha.
But, I just look at, I think back to the I think it was 64, the great New England blackout when the hydro plant shorted out in Canada. But I just look at hydropower as really the cleanest producer in energy. And I'd like to see more of it developed in our state.
Yeah, I mean, as you probably know, again, we're a delivery company back in the, well after the sixties, but back in the late nineties, the electric industry was deregulated, if you will, and generation was spun off. So that really is separate. We are purely a transmission and distribution, regulated transmission and distribution company, really are prohibited in many ways at this point in time from getting back wholesale into the generation system. Obviously, we did invest with Ørsted in the offshore wind, but it's also very public that we're really getting out of that offshore wind business. Again, I would just say they're not because we don't believe in it or believe in clean energy. We are full supporters of being able to enable electric vehicles. I know many of the towns here are kind of participating in a program that's trying to help incentivize that. We've set our own personal target of 2030 to be carbon neutral, a very tall task for us as a company to get there. And we believe in wind power as well. It's just really not our business. We're a regulated T&D business. We got into that really to help Ørsted, which is an international company, to get the lay of the land and get that project off the ground. And that project is now well on its way. The onshore pieces are practically constructed. And that's a business where we never had any intentions to be an international player, which is essentially what you would have to be to make it in that type of business. So we thought now was the time to get out. Your overall point is really, to me at least, where I think it's going is, the coal's gone, the oil will soon be gone. These nuclear power plants, they're here today, but they're not going to be here forever. There is some talk of smaller scale nuclear that would also be clean coming online. But that's a difficult one for me to foresee, just the regulatory, I don't mean the regulatory, that's the wrong word. The ability to get that permitted, I personally think there's a lot of challenges with that, it's classic. Most folks are not going to want even a small power plant near them. So I think there's challenges there. So I think you're right. I think it's hydro and wind and solar. Those three really do seem like they are what we should look forward to as the clean energy mix moving forward. So what that means is, on the transmission side, on the delivery, now I'm putting it into my world, the delivery side of the business. If you think all those coal-fired plants, the oil plants, even the nuclear plants, they may have been around the corner, but they generally were located very close to the cities or the heavy manufacturing areas. They're located pretty close to where the big loads are. And the transmission system was built years ago, really with that in mind. It's interconnected to give you reliability, but it's built assuming that the load and the big generators are close. You fast forward, and really only a few years from now, obviously huge pieces of it are coming at least 30 or more miles away offshore. You get hydro, which really at scale, as you pointed out, is up in northern Quebec. And then you have onshore wind, which I think to get enough mass to bring them together to get the scale of power that you need, they're going to tend to be located either well to the north of us or well to the west of us. So the transmission system is really not built assuming that you're gonna have to wheel that amount of power those distances, so it requires investment in the transmission system to make it work. Now, on the delivery side, what I see there, solar, even though they have a lot of solar arrays, probably works best if you, from a land use perspective, if you're going on an existing roof, which means really, if you're gonna proliferate it across the entire state and pick a number, 80% of the rooftops in the state. Again, the challenge for us as a delivery company is if you take a residential area that today tends to be at the very end of our circuits, and we're not necessarily pushing a lot of power out to that area. But now you put solar on every rooftop, and what would have been a blue sky today, like today, which is not because of the smoke in the air, but on a blue sky today, like today, between like 2 in the afternoon and between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock, depending on what time it is, there's significantly more power trying to go from that residential area to get back to the downtown areas and the industrial parks than goes out to those homes today. So for us, it means, again, an investment in the distribution system to, again, enable that power to flow back and forth. Both the solar moving towards the towns during the day on sunny days, but then at night, if you envision a world in which every garage or driveway has one or more electric vehicles in it, plugging in at night, you've got a lot more power pushing the other way at night. So both of which are challenges for us, both of which require investment levels in both the T and the D system. There really are, it's a generational swing in the electric system that we're looking at. We're right on the cusp of it on the transmission system. It's actually already started on the transmission system. And it's just beginning, really, in my opinion, on the distribution system. So long-winded answer to a good question.
Steve, if we can, and I think if we, in order to keep this moving.
Well, we do have one question
Okay.
online.
Okay.
Ken, if we could just.
Okay.
Hi, Henry. I promise I'll make it fast. Steve, thanks for all this great information. Is there a bill with all of the different pieces and parts, sort of, as you said, unpacked somewhere online, like a sample bill that has call out boxes that are, it's just a simple infographic to help our residents understand their bill? I do get a lot of questions about the different pieces and parts of the bill. If not, I encourage you to see if you have a marketing person handy to attend to that. And I've also had, I've been really encouraging folks to take the audit, and the feedback that I've been getting, which is just anecdotal, has not been super positive. They felt it was very cursory. They sort of went through quickly. There wasn't much that they did. So I don't know if you have a feedback loop for that program, but you might want to think about having one, or maybe it's time to relook at the program. Pretty much, I would say 80% of the feedback that I got from a few dozen folks was not super exciting. So that's just feedback for you all. Rob, I can't hear anything.
Did you hear before? Because nothing's changed.
Yeah, I heard up until just Steve started talking.
Yeah, just I think I was pointed in the wrong direction. So in terms of the bill, it really, we don't, but that's great feedback. We'll work on that. Most bills do break it out into supply and delivery. It's just that on the delivery side, you have to keep in mind that 20% public policy is baked in there. And then on your feedback, that's very good feedback. I have received feedback more on the timeline. So many people are asking for the audits, if you will. The timelines are stretched out, but your feedback that they're cursory and then we're not offering enough is definitely feedback that we'll take and look at, because unless your home has already been through an audit or is relatively new, I would say most residential customers probably would benefit from upgrades in terms of weatherization. So that's great feedback. Thank you.
And I don't know if you
Steve?
have a post survey, but I would strongly suggest getting something out there for people. Thanks.
There a possibility to get your contact information directly, only because I have a lot of questions and I don't want to belabor the meeting. But I think a lot of numerous complaints over the delivery costs outweighing the electric costs and all those good things that I'm sure you probably maybe talked about in the beginning before I came in, but breaking the backs of residents and seniors in our communities and single parents, me being one single parent, raising 2 kids on my own. When my electric bill comes in and my electric, it's only $63, but getting it to my house was $142. That makes me almost have a heart attack. And I read in the paper that the CEO and everybody else is getting bonuses. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, kick that stuff down to us. We're the ones keeping you guys going. You know, because if we decide to just go offline and go off grid, more and more people are homeschooling, more and more people are learning how to homestead, more and more people trying to figure it out. Because we cannot, Connecticut residents across this country with inflation and everything else, cannot afford to live anymore. And to keep the lights on. I mean, it's pretty bad when I have to take half the light bulbs out of my house and tell my kids only turn on one light and hope that lights both rooms. Because I've done the LED, I've done I've done the inspection, they've come out and done the energy audit and everything else. I've done everything to cut the bill. Even looked into solar, which is ugly and I don't want it on my house, but I'm willing to do it because if it's gonna cut my money. But then that's not even affordable. You know, when they come back with the numbers on that, you're paying more for the solar panels than I was for electric to start.
Not
So
to,
it
not
doesn't
to
work
mention,
out.
you're telling us that in the wintertime, don't count on your heat if it gets cold. So the reliability is also a major factor, so.
And
Yeah, again, if I could, just 2 things on that. Again, the proportions that you just gave, I don't think those can be. If you look at the bill and you average it out over the year, it's about 50% on the supply side. It just is. The delivery side, you can look at and say it is about 50%. However, again, if you got about 20% of that as public policy, so it's 50, 40, 10 other proportions. In the summer, when the supply goes down, proportionally, that delivery does look more. It'll be fairly even this summer. And again, our rates, pure delivery rates, if you take out the supply and you take out the public policy, our Eversource's delivery rates have been very consistent. If you go back 10 years and you track them, we've essentially gone up at just about the rate of inflation. They have gone up. They have not gone down. They have not been flat, but they're essentially tracking at pretty much the rate of inflation. Just like I think just about most other commodity prices in the world. And again, unfortunately, as we're moving into a time frame, as I talked about, where there's vast changes in the T&D system, I'm happy to give you my contact details, by the way. I cannot, I can't look you in the eye and say, yeah, you know what, the rates are gonna go down. They're physically, to make the system work, to enable solar, electric vehicles, clean energy. That's not gonna happen. Now, in theory, other parts like yourself, I referenced my propane bill earlier. If I move to a heat pump, my electric bill will go up. In theory, my propane bill is going away. So I think you've got to look holistically at the whole thing. But in terms of being able to have a reliable T&D system, that's a tough challenge. And I know I'm up against time, but just quickly to your point, that really is on the generation side. We as a company are responsible for the delivery. We've done everything we can to advocate.
I think what I'd like to see is maybe New England ISO come here and address that, because we keep hearing Eversource bringing it up, but then Eversource is not a responsibility. I think maybe the COG should really say, hey, let's get somebody from New England ISO in here, because I really think that we are under appreciating the magnitude of rolling blackouts and winter time is going to have on our community.
Yeah.
So we'll end it with
When
that.
you have people in your office crying, because they can't pay their electric bill, and they're coming to the town to look for help. And the town's looking at the electric bill. I don't know about anybody else, but my electric bills for the town went up 80%. 80% from last year to this year. That is insane. I'm like, what building can we close?
I can
Everybody work
assure
from
you,
home.
your Eversource rate, your Eversource piece, in absolutely no way, shape, or form did our portion of the bill go up 80%. The last thing I would just say, perfectly willing to come back and discuss any of these issues, including the regional reliability, because we do try and work with ISO. So I certainly can talk to that, but I really don't want to chew up any more of your time. And I greatly appreciate what you did. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think it was very informative. We may move some of the agenda. items.
Well, we have one that's not gonna be reported anyway, Casey's not here today.
Oh,
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. And we have two community relations specialists here to help in any way, shape or form.
right.
Thank you.
Kim, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? Rob, do I have,
Yeah,
ability to?
see if you can share your screen, because it should be built in to the
Okay,
meeting.
let's see. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so I want to thank Rob and Emily and the board for having CROG here today. I know we are pressed for time, so I'm going to move things along quickly. My name is Kim Bona. I'm a program manager here with the Capital Region Council of Governments, and joining me today from CROG is Pauline Yoder, our COO.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to interrupt real quick. Right now, we're seeing baby girl on the screen.
Oh, no. Well, she is cute, right? But
She's totally adorable.
she's my baby. Let's see why that didn't work.
It was up and then it went to your home screen.
And I think you moved it.
Oh, okay. Can you see it now? Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so so that was my dog. Anyway, so thank you again for having us here today. I am excited to talk to all of you a little bit about what I like to refer to as the hidden gem of our capital region, and that is our Capital Region Purchasing Council, better known as the CRPC. Little history on the CRPC. It was founded in 1969 by CROG at the request of municipalities who were essentially seeking ways to benefit from centralized purchasing. So through the CRPC, aggregating quantities from our towns when we are getting ready to go out to bid, we are purchasing in volume, which is promoting efficiency for the towns while resulting in lower pricing. In addition, we are improving the quality of goods and services through adequate and detailed bid specifications. And most importantly, we are meeting municipal bidding requirements, as everything we bid, whether it's through ITB or an RFQ, RFP, is competitively solicited. So fast forward 50 plus years later, we have approximately 140 member towns and agencies that are now members of the CRPC. Most recently, we just had the Northeast Council of Governments join us, which we are excited to welcome 16 more towns to our cooperative. And these towns and the other multiple towns across the state continue to benefit from the many perks of the Purchasing Council, including the fact that most of our bids allow for piggybacking, with the exception of a few, which I'll mention in a little bit. A nice thing about it as well is that if you are participating in a certain bid, you're not obligated to contract with one of the vendors or one of the bidders that comes in, unless it's something that is favorable to your town or you see the pricing you like. Otherwise, it's all voluntary. You can walk away if nothing is attractive to you once bid results are posted. There are no strings attached. And then finally, at the end of each fiscal year, CROG will produce a bid savings report, which will show the COG and all the towns their savings that they accrued throughout the year by participating in our bids and our programs. So a quick run through of the available programs through the cooperative. We have our bids for commodities and services. We have our job order contracting program, or EasyIQC, which is indefinite quantity construction. We have an energy consortia, and we have an IT services cooperative. So I'll talk real quick a little bit about each one of these, starting with our bids. To the left of the slide, you're going to see a table with a list of several different services and commodities. We, on an average, issue 12 to 17 bids annually. The three that are highlighted are the three I was referring to earlier when I said most of them are piggybackable. Treated road salt, gasoline, and fuel are not. And that is because these are location specific, and it is important that we get the suppliers the most accurate
estimates as possible so they can be prepared for the upcoming season. But a little bit about the bid process itself. It's quite simple for our members. Essentially what happens is I will send an email out to the CRPC members inviting you to send me your quantities for said bid. So you'll receive an email saying, we're preparing to issue the bid for gasoline. Please send me your quantities. The email will, within the email, there will be a spreadsheet that you will fill out with your town name and the information you regarding your quantities requested. Close out of that. It's going to automatically save you're done. That's all you need to do on your end. I will pull together the bid specifications and advertise the bid. Once the bid is issued, I will go ahead and, of course, once it closes, review the bids, pull together a bid tabulation, and post the results. Not only do we post them to our website, we're also going to send those results to our towns, to all of our CRPC members, so they can easily access the pricing available and the vendor information should you wish to contact a supplier and contract. Again, you make the award. If there's nothing there that is favorable for you, you walk away. Like I said earlier, voluntary, no strings attached. So moving on to our job order contracting program, our EasyIQC indefinite quantity construction. This is our competitively bid construction program for on-call construction service for construction projects. The unique thing about this program is that not only is the consulting firm, which is the Gordian Group, competitively bid by CROG, CROG also competitively bids upfront the contractors for each region. So we offer this program for general construction services and road and bridge construction services. We have a contractor assigned to each region in the state for both programs. And the benefits, the pricing is clear. The contractors, when we go out to bid, they bid on a construction task catalog or a CTC. So everything is itemized and priced upfront. So when they're building your proposal, those prices are already set, which results in limited to no change orders. And in terms of getting started with a project through EasyIQC, it's quite simple. You can either contact myself or you can contact the Gordian Group, being a CRPC member, and the Gordian Group's going to come out and they're going to scope the project. And from there, they're going to get in touch with the contractor who will pull together a proposal with Gordian. Gordian will bring that proposal back to you, to your town, for review and make any adjustments necessary. So you are eliminating the entire bidding process to get a contractor, which is very time saving. Moving on to our energy consortia. So by aggregating kilowatts together, we're going to achieve a greater savings, right? So CROG holds a reverse auction to maximize pricing from qualified suppliers. The last auction we held was in 2020, and participants, I think we were contracted. Constellation New Energy was the supplier at the time. However, MP2, which is now Shell, was a low bid for that auction. And that resulted in 18.2% savings for those towns that participated. So it was really, really great and very, very helpful for our towns. For those towns that were unable to participate in the auction, they're still able to contract off that RFP and utilize our consulting firm, which is New Energin, to see what best options are out there for them with regard to pricing and electricity. In addition, other services will include bill auditing and assistance with budgeting. And then finally, we also offer natural gas as part of this consortia. However, that has been on hiatus for some time due to, of course, the market, but we are hopeful that, we can work with our consultant and see if things start trending in a more favorable direction to get that back going again soon. And then the last part I want to talk about here is our IT Shared Services Cooperative. This part of the CRPC is actually managed by my colleague, Robin Nichols. She had to be at another meeting today, so she's not here to talk about this, but I'm going to give a real brief overview of the services included within this cooperative. There are, we have online permitting software and services through either OpenGov or Municity. Novus Insight will supply cybersecurity assessment, training, and remediation. We have VoIP phone systems through IP Genie, fiber optic broadband infrastructures through Certex. And then we've got through Novus again, IT consulting and hosting services. And finally, I'm sorry, I just realized I was on the same slide. Time and attendance software through NovaTime. So again, through the CRPC, these are all IT services that you are available to contract with without having to go out to bid. And lastly, over the years, CROG and the CRPC, we're constantly issuing different various RFPs and ITBs and RFQs. So with your membership, you're also able to piggyback on any of these contracts. Some recent ones that we just put out, we have now contracted with Daniel Penn Associates for diversity, equity, and inclusion training services. ClearGov, we have a contract with, and it's really been great. A lot of our towns are taking advantage of that for budget presentation software. We have recently contracted with EPR Systems for fire EMS records management software. Lots of fire departments are hopping on board with that after Firehouse Software was bought by ESO. We have, we offer human resource consulting services through HR Consulting, and then textile recycling through Bay State. And finally, our most recent RFQ went out, and we have 3 medical providers that we're offering now for pre-employment, DPW, firefighter physicals, and medical services that we have listed on our website for our towns and our members to utilize if they wish to. Membership is $500 per town through the COG. So if Northwest Hills decides to sign up for this, it would be a $500 fee for each participating town. Otherwise, the town can join individually on their own for a fee of $750 per fiscal year. And that is all I have. I'm happy to take some questions if anyone has any.
Any questions?
I think one comment, I think Winchester, you've done this in the past as well too. We worked through this as you're on your own through as an individual town, correct?
That's right. So we're currently signed up. We have already had conversations. Good to see you, Pauline and Kim. And I've worked through this system when I worked in the capital region. Winchester's currently signed up. Of course, there is an additional fee going into next year in the event that we're going it alone. But given the benefits, we wanted to bring it forward and see if there was an interest in the Northwest Hills joining.
And Jean is on, we have had another request, Jean.
Jean had a request. Any other question? Jean?
Yeah, so I would be, Kent would be interested in joining as one of the COG towns. And just a quick question. I happen to have a form sitting on my desk from our land use administrator wanting to join as land use. I would imagine that we should be joining as a town, not as a separate agency.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, and I'll just really quickly say that obviously some of these programs that they're running are actually programs that we already have been doing for some time, road salt, plow plates, things of that nature. So what we could do, assuming that there's enough interest, is that we could get involved with this, but at the same time, we can continue to kind of look on our own end and compare, see if we get anything that's kind of more favorable for our region through the means that we've been using in the past. Or if we find that, this is the better solution, there's certainly a more robust menu of choices with this than what we've been providing traditionally. So just a thought.
I would just like to see examples of what the prices that they are getting, so we can compare to what we already are.
Yeah, we can get, maybe I'll work with Kim and me to get some follow-up information. We can send it out.
Absolutely. We have all of our bid results and pricing posted on our website. I'm happy to share that information with you. Absolutely.
That would be great.
And if I may also make a note that if it's through the COG, all the towns don't necessarily have to join. We have a couple of COGs where it's just, a few of the towns within the COG. It's just that the billing comes from us to the COG as opposed to going to the individual towns.
Thank you very much. I have a suggestion that we go to the action items now directly, so that we can finish those relatively quickly. Because this is our annual meeting and we have to do these things and get them done.
Thank you, Kim. Colin.
So why don't you take those, Ross?
Okay. Okay, so yeah, the first one, approval of statement of work and NHCOG annual budget. I sent out very late last night, a memorandum including our proposed budget for the next fiscal year, and it also includes a kind of an attachment. It's not really associated with it, but I package it together, the statement of work, which is part of the regional service grant, also known as the RSG. The budget summary pretty much kind of describes a little bit of it. Hopefully you had a chance to read it. It went out late. Obviously, we had our executive committee meeting yesterday afternoon. It was the only time we could get in to get a quorum to discuss the proposed budget, and so that's why everything was condensed and pushed out so late last night. But just to kind of give you a quick, just a overview, just looking at the budget itself, what we're doing here is traditionally you've looked at, I would kind of consider the operating budget of the COG in the past, where literally the funds that are being utilized by COG staff or consultancy for the programs that have gone on year to year. It really isn't all encompassing to all of the money that might be coming through the COG. There was notations on the old budget that I think it was, various programs were, pass-through funding. It was just a notation that there's pass-through funding going through the COG, but no one really knew how much and where and how much was allocated to which program. So we're attempting to do it with some outside assistance with a former finance director with another COG, is that we put together basically a budget summary package that is much more clear, much more detailed, much more transparent. And just if I want to walk through quickly with the first sheet of the budget summary, it's pretty clear. We have our revenue numbers from federal, state, and local fund sources. Much more in line with what you would normally see in our audit. As far as the end of the fiscal year, it's usually that's the number we're looking at, but you wouldn't see that previously in our annual budget presentation. Expenditures is broken out into salaries, management support salaries, which is basically monies that are not really directly attributable to any grant source program. The direct salaries would be attributable. It can be, the salaries posted to the various grant programs. And again, they're all different. There's different requirements and conditions in all these grants, the way they broke it down, the budgets, there's nothing that's exactly the same as the other. Even different federal grants are different as far as the budget. So it's not a clear, easy way to try and explain this. It's more complicated than one would think. Employee benefits, everything that's pretty self-explanatory. That's going to be your payroll expenses, your paid time off, and your other fringe benefits are associated with personnel. Overhead, we all know what overhead is. That hasn't really changed from the past budget presentation because it's very similar. Contractual, you'll see a number of 811,000. Basically, when we get to that page, that's literally the money that's coming into the COG and going out of the COG, not being consumed by the COG staff time or any other programs within the agency, but actually going out. Direct expenses, that's a line item for just basically capital improvements for the office. You'll see an unobligated surplus of 55,000. That's essentially unspent transportation funds. We had an increase in transportation funds through the state this year. It's a 2-year program. We can carry over to year 2. This would be year 1. So we did have this excess, and we could carry that over, or if, as I'll explain in a minute, it may be a change once we do an amended budget. Page 2, total income sources, it's all broken down, federal, state, local. Local can also be other as well. And then the total income sources, the notes pretty much explain what those different programs are and you know, a little more detail as far as where the funding is coming from and why. Page 3, the operating budget. This is where it's kind of similar to past operating budgets that you have reviewed in the past. We have our operating income sources that are actually the money that are actually being spent on COG staff time or programs within the agency. Our staffing numbers and our overhead costs, which is broken out into individual line items. That some of the overhead is going to change. This is all based on information for our current location. But obviously, by September 1st, we're looking at the advanced location. Those numbers are actually going to go down between rent and some of the individual overhead cost line items. Again, I mentioned capital reoccurring. So there you see the unobligated difference, so 55,300 in the operating budget. And then the last page is the contractual budget. Again, this is the consultant revenue coming in. It's not being burned by COG agency staff time. And it's literally going out the door to the programs or consultants associated with those programs. And so there's a revenue side, there's an expenditure side, and they both balance out. A little note about the SPR funding at the bottom. It's an 80-10-10 arrangement, which is our only grant is situated like that. Last page I included is just the membership dues at the request of the executive committee, just a reminder of the breakdown of the local dues distribution for each town. This was approved by executive committee and the board back in February or January. I think it was February, the actual meeting. The rate, the per capita rate was unchanged, was left flat, but the changes to individual towns is based on the change in population, based on the year-over-year public health population estimates. So it's a pretty clear understanding as what each town's giving in for their local dues. And again, lastly, the statement of work for the grant award budget is not something that really needs to be approved. It's there for your information. This is based on a flat RSG funding amount that we've been dealing with in the last year. However, as we were putting this budget together, this draft budget together yesterday, late the day before obviously the state budget passed, within the state budget language, the implementer language was basically the RSG was authorized 10 years ago to be at 7 million for all the COGs, and it was never fully funded. The language that was passed actually fully funds the program for all 9 COGs. So we are looking at potentially up to about 100% increase in our RSG funding, which is our backbone of the agency that literally applies to most everything that we do here. It functions as a match for federal grants in some cases, and pretty much it's the meat and potatoes that kind of makes the agency run. So the actual amounts are we're not quite sure yet until we get guidance from OPM on how this is gonna work. But my anticipation is we're gonna receive that guidance within the next couple of weeks, prior to July 1, and we're gonna have to do an amended budget based on that, which could include more than likely some staff, the ability to hire additional staff, which would be really, really good for the region and for us. So with that said, there are, I had in the cover memo, I had mentioned there were a couple of basically off budget expenditures and other asset balances that don't normally show up in the budget. We're going to work on that with the amended budget, and also with the change to this budget, we're going to have monthly reporting and balance reporting. It's going to be a little different and a little more robust moving into the next fiscal year. So all in all, to summarize it all, is that we're trying to kind of break this out, be more transparent, more reflective, and much clearer picture moving forward as we move into next fiscal year and beyond. So
this is a work in progress, but could I have a motion to approve the budget?
I'll second that.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed, any abstained? Okay, I'll take the second one. We're just gonna continue the current officers we have on both the nominating committee and the officers and the executive committee. for the time being until October. At which time, because there will probably be a lot of change in the first selectman. And we think that that's a prudent way to do. So do I have a motion to approve that? Okay.
For November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's October. The reason that I stated October is that we will do it through the October meeting. At the October meeting, I will propose a nominating committee, and I will resign at the end of that meeting. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can we just do the minutes? All those in favor? Motion, yeah, okay, we have to have a motion, I'm sorry.
I'm so moved.
Second.
Okay, good, all those in favor?
Aye.
You skip over the gear.
What?
Yeah, I think you would skip over.
Matching grant program.
Well, the unfortunate thing is Casey had an emergency in the family, a pretty serious one, and she had to leave yesterday, which she's not here. We're running out of time anyway, so we can address this in July. We'll just kick it over.
Can we kick over the remaining things? I just introduction of our intern.
He's actually not here, but we have a new sustainable intern, Ryan
Okay.
Zinecki. You'll meet him. Don's met him.
Okay, so since it is 11:01, can we adjourn the meeting? Second. Okay, all in favor, let's go to CCM.
Thank you online. We're gonna switch over to CCM here locally.